The candidates, it's not easy to run for public office. It's not easy to hold a public office. It's not easy to participate in a forum like we will have tonight. Again, each one of the candidates deserves our thanks as residents of Woburn and interested parties in Woburn for your willingness to run for office and serve your community in such a dedicated manner. So each and every one of the candidates I applaud. And last, a slight plug for the WBA. About 6 months ago, Banker and Tradesman, which is a real estate and banking trade publication, began to complete a municipal snapshot of Woburn. The supplement is a 24-page edition which will be distributed along with the Daily Times Chronicle newspaper to all Daily Times Chronicle readers in Woburn on Friday night. The supplement is a very positive publication on Woburn. It reminds us of the many fine attributes that we have in this city. If you do not receive your copy for any reason at all, please call the WBA office and we'll see that you get one. Number one, I'd like to remind all of you that there will be another candidates night sometime prior to the November election, a date to be announced, a format that will probably be similar to this format, and if Ms. Outwater and New Horizons is gracious enough, maybe we'll have it here again. It seemed to work pretty well. Number two, I don't think that I need to remind the people that are in this room to vote on October 8th. I think this is probably about a 90% voting group, if not more, but I'd encourage you to encourage others to vote. It's critical to be involved in the election process. Number three, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for your courtesy and for your attention to the candidates tonight. It was really enjoyable for me to sit there and appreciate the way that you were weighing the thoughts of the candidates very carefully in your mind. I'd also like to thank Phil Gallagher. You made it seem easy, but being a moderator at an event like this is a very difficult task, and he did it with great style. And last but not least, to the candidates, good luck next Tuesday. Good luck in November for those fortunate enough to be in the election in November. You had the most difficult job probably in the city of Woburn tonight, and you all did an excellent job handling yourself and your respective candidacies. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Jamie McKeown, and I'm the president of the Woburn Business Association. On behalf of the WBA, welcome to the second of three 1991 candidate nights. Before turning the program over to Jay Corey, chairman of the WBA Business Government Committee, I'd like to thank the Golf and Ski Authority for making this facility available this evening. Due to limited time and resources, the WBA originally intended to conduct one event for the primary election and one for the general election in November. Having two programs for the general election allows all the candidates a greater opportunity to present their views. Also, I'd like to thank the Woburn Democratic Committee and the Woburn Republican Committee for assisting us in setting up the format for this evening's program. As a reminder, this evening's program will present the candidates for school committee and aldermen at large. On Wednesday evening, the mayoral candidates and ward alderman candidates will be given an opportunity to present their views. That candidates night will once again be held at New Horizons at Choate in the community room, and again refreshments will be served beginning at 6:30 p.m. and the formal program will begin at 7 p.m. The WBA is very pleased to sponsor this forum for the candidates and the voters of Woburn. We hope you enjoy the program. Good evening. My name is Jamie McKeown, and I'm the president of the WBA. On behalf of the WBA, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the third and final WBA 1991 Candidates Night. This evening we will be focusing on the mayoral race, and the Ward Alderman contests. Before proceeding, I'd like to thank Mary Ann Outwater, Executive Director of New Horizons at Choate, for allowing the WBA to utilize this community room again and providing the delicious cookies and coffee. The WBA has had quite a few calls for the New Horizons cookie recipe. In addition to all her other duties, Mary Ann is responsible for desserts, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share the recipe with you. Thank you, Mary Ann. Just very briefly, I know it's been a very busy and long program. For the last time, in conjunction with 1991 Candidates Nights, thank you, Phil Gallagher, for your interest and willingness to serve as moderator.
Cummings Properties, which operates office parks, has decorated one of their buildings with a giant yellow ribbon. Many people driving by have called the company to congratulate them. Some have called to charge the company with just trying to grab some good public relations.
For those few people that might look at it as commercialization or promotion, I apologize, but we feel that the good that it's doing far outweighs the concerns of a few.
Howdy.
How you doing?
You all set to go?
All set.
What did you warm up?
Next year, that's our look right there.
Oh.
We'll get
that looks pretty good, doesn't it?
See the company banner?
Horse go this way? Yeah.
I was going to be mean and put ice down all your backs and really give something to take a picture of. Oh, Jamie!
Good evening. Welcome to Topics. My guest this evening is James McKeown. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Jamie is a 1973 graduate of Woburn High School. He did his undergraduate work with a BS in education at Salem State and his master's degree also in education at the University of Vermont. He is a lifelong resident of Woburn. He's currently employed as the president of Cummings Properties, and he's also the president of the Woburn Boys and Girls Club, which is our topic this evening. I wanted to make sure I got that correct, Jamie. Let's start with give us the basic mission statement of excuse me, of the Woburn Boys and Girls Club.
The mission statement is to promote the total development and well-being of youth, and that was changed within the last few years to accommodate what perhaps was perceived to be the eventual change to the Boys and Girls Club, away from just the Boys Club of Woburn.
Now, any controversy attached to the changing of the times, the changing of the guard from a boys-oriented program to a recognition of who the whole public that it served?
Well, I think there's always going to be controversy with a change of that nature. We did a needs assessment roughly 5 years ago, and at that time we determined that it wasn't the right time to change to the Boys and Girls Club, and we didn't. This time around, again, it was completely voluntary. The directors took it under consideration and made the determination that the time was right, and did vote in the change to become the Boys and Girls Club of Woburn in December.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to talk about the Boy of the Year program, of which you are a former Boy of the Year in the program, but we'll talk about that later.
Long time ago.
Now, does it have a national affiliation in terms of being attached to a national organization?
Yes. The Boys and Girls Clubs of America also underwent a similar name change last September, formerly the Boys Clubs of America. And as a result of an agreement with Girls Clubs of America, Girls Clubs of America is now Girls, Inc. And Boys Clubs of America became Boys and Girls Clubs of America.
Oh, but the girls didn't add the boys at all, huh?
Girls didn't add the boys.
Okay.
And there was very much some controversy surrounding that change. The Boys and Girls Club has been extremely fortunate over the years to have a very stable professional staff. Charlie Gardner, who is the executive director, has been the executive director for over 25 years now. The assistant executive director, Glenn Sterling, has similarly been with the club for over 15 years now, I guess it's been. In terms of number of staff, the Boys Club doesn't survive by the presence of professional staff. The Boys and Girls Club survives by volunteers, and there are virtually several hundred volunteers that contribute on a very regular basis to the Boys Club. That's what keeps it open and operating.
Well, who are some of the, how is it founded? Who are some of the players, the driving forces? And correct me if I'm wrong, is this the 30th birthday this year?
We're approaching the 30th birthday, and it was originally founded by a group of concerned Woburn citizens and business people Most prominent in my mind is the former chief of police in Woburn, Leo McKeown, who was involved in the Pony Baseball League in Woburn. And he saw, as he describes it to me, he saw a situation where there was a program that kept the kids interested, but after the baseball game was over, there was no place to go. And he got together a group of concerned Woburn business people who came up with the idea for the then Boys Club and made it happen, which is a remarkable feat to make something like that happen and get the cooperation of all involved. But they did, and it's been very steady, successful with your usual ups and downs over the 30 years.
Well, describe the facilities for us in terms of then, now, some of the capital improvements that have been made, progress that's been made in that area.
The original facility included a library, games room, and most notably an indoor Olympic-sized swimming pool. Later on, a gymnasium was added and an additional locker room. And the facility is well-kept, well-used, and very appropriate for the youth that it serves, which is, for the most part, youth age 8 to 18 years old.
Now, you had rather a significant party in 1990, I guess. Well, I guess anytime volunteer work, a party is always accompanied by a fundraiser, so I assume there was a fundraiser also. But tell us about the burning of the mortgage.
The burning of the mortgage was an idea that the executive committee of the organization came up with. The mortgage was pretty much expired on its own. The mortgage burning party was more a recognition that we reached a milestone, we had achieved a level of stability, if not financial success, but we really wanted to recognize all the efforts that had gone into the organization in the 30-year history. And also we wanted to recognize the efforts of the banks that held the mortgage for that 30 years. I kid and say that we burned the mortgage at 30 years, but the mortgage was actually due at 25 years. And the banks of Woburn, and its banks plural, lived with the organization through some very rocky times when that mortgage payment didn't quite come in on a timely basis.
Well, speaking of rocky times in terms of the banking industry, who'd have thought that the Boys Club might outlast the banking industry? Which seems to be hopefully where everybody's turning the corner in that area. Now, who and how many and how does the decision-making process work? I assume there's a collection of different levels of decision-making. And how does one become president?
Let me answer the question that's more fun to answer first. One becomes president, in my case, by starting off as a goldfish in the swimming program in 1967 and working himself up through the ranks. I've been very active in the organization since that first day. I fell in love with it from the first day. I spent an incredible amount of time at the club doing anything from working as a lifeguard, which I started in I think the 7th or the 8th grade for $1 an hour, and working my way up to swimming director while I was going to college. After I graduated from college, I fortunately ended up with a position with Cummings Properties in Woburn, again as a result of my involvement with the Boys Club. Bill Cummings, the chairman of Cummings Properties, is on the directors. And when it was time for me to get a real job, I called Bill Cummings, and he must have felt that my Boys Club background left me with some spirit and some potential, and he hired me. And that Woburn involvement with my professional career allowed me to spend the time in my Boys Club endeavor as well.
Classic case of networking, even starting out as a goldfish. Huh?
Well, I wasn't quite thinking of that when I was a goldfish, but eventually it did turn out that way, fortunately for me, and hopefully for the Boys Club, and hopefully for Cummings Properties.
Now, about the board of directors, what's the governmental structure of the program?
There is a board which consists of approximately 40, mostly local business people, and a board of incorporators which is comprised of about 120, again, local business people and residents as well. Within the board, there's an executive committee, which consists of the president and officers, along with a couple of other members of the board. And most of the recommendations that the board acts on are initiated by the professional staff and considered by the executive committee and brought before the board for action. The immediate future is a carnival, Dean and Flynn Carnival, which will be held the week of May 13th at the Northeast Trade Center in Woburn. And the Boys Club provides volunteers to staff the booths, the ticket booths, and participates in the profits from the carnival. And again, that is a very significant fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, and that's coming up May 13th.
It's coming up May 13th.
Okay, now let's talk about the membership. And for most of the surrounding communities, we've seen a phenomenon of declining enrollments. At the school age level, a flattening of the overall population in the communities. How is that affecting the Boys Club in terms of usage of the facility?
One of the things that's actually surprised me a little bit, Phil, is that the organization has managed to increase its membership at the youth level in spite of declining enrollments in the schools. And it says that we're doing something right. We're reaching the community in a way that it should be reached. We're serving the community in a way it should be served. I give an awful lot of credit to the professional staff in that regard. They're extremely innovative. They don't rest in their laurels. It isn't your usual menu of basketball and swimming lessons. They come up with programs that are creative beyond my imagination.
Well, I've got a list here that we can talk about in detail. But you're up now to a number that I had looked at that was like an average daily attendance was like something like 219, but that really isn't the telling number, really. The number is somewhere in the order of, what, 100,000 that's gone through the doors. That's the key number, isn't it?
That's the number that walked through the doors in the past 12 months. Mm-hmm. And that includes not only the membership, which the 200 daily attendance reflects only, but the $100,000 number includes access by other organizations within the community. We work in conjunction with other organizations from the Woburn Council of Social Concern, Woburn Little League, Woburn Youth Hockey, Pop Warner Football, soccer, you name it. They use the facility in some way, shape, or manner during the year.
Okay. 100,000 people. Dollars, you were thinking fundraising there for a second.
No, I wasn't. I really wasn't. I can get away from that sometimes.
For other communities, how does one go about getting a Boys Club?
I think it would be extremely difficult today, based on my knowledge of what is involved in the Boys and Girls Club of Woburn and what it takes to just to keep it running. The more knowledge I have as to what it takes to run it, the more impressed I am with the feat of getting the organization established at the time that it did. Even though the dollars were less, the buying power of those dollars was a whole lot more in those days. So I think it's extremely difficult to establish an organization like this today.
Well, even more extraordinary the fact that you can keep it open at this point in terms of the size of the budget and the constant reliance on contributions.
We're approaching, again, the 3-year drive next spring, and we are a little concerned with the economic climate as it pertains to donations, since we do rely so heavily on the business community. But I think that the business community will continue to support the Boys and Girls Clubs in the same way that it has in the past. Over 60% of the operating funds are derived solely from Woburn business community.
Now, although we agree it would be difficult, but did they give you, if we were to contact, say, for instance, Burlington doesn't have one. Stoneham, I think, does have a Boys Club, but Wilmington, I don't believe, has one.
No.
The communities that don't have one, is there a how-to book that you can get from the national organization, or?
The national organization very much does promote additional clubs and facilities and is extremely accessible and cooperative in terms of starting new organizations. They actually have a program with a goal of establishing X number of new facilities across the country each year.
Now, let's talk about, let's talk about you for a moment. What kind of a thrill was it for you to achieve being the president after being, in your youth, being the boy of the year? Was it a full circle for you?
It was extremely gratifying for me, extremely. From the time I was 10 years old and first became a member of the Boys Club till the time I became president, just to reflect back on that period of time was extremely gratifying. It's nice for me to feel as though I'm giving back something to the organization that I feel just shaped pretty much every aspect of my life. It gave me my first job, again as a lifeguard for $1 an hour. I worked all the way through college, and it gave me my professional career. I like to think that the fact that I did it, and I don't hold myself out as anything wonderful or great, but the fact that I did it, I think, makes the Leo McElhennys of the world, the people that were the founding fathers and of the organization.
Maybe sharing a little bit of that pride,
perhaps? I think so. I think so, and I hope so, because I certainly look at it that way.
Well, now you're faced with kind of a dilemma this year, now that it's the Boys and Girls Club. There won't be a boy of the year anymore. We're going to change that to, or is it going to be changed? That's under discussion now at this point?
Well, I said there wasn't much controversy, but we didn't talk about that particular subject. I'm sure that'll generate some controversy within the club. I think that this year there will be a Boy of the Year, because the Boy of the Year award is based on the prior year's involvement in the organization. So we didn't have the Boys and Girls Club for the entire prior year, so we'll go with the Boy of the Year this year.
So now you start bucking up against tradition.
And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens for next year.
But it is under discussion, huh?
It is under discussion. Actually, the way the decision by the directors of the organization was to start with co-ed or equal access programming on a limited basis, and we decided to do it on Wednesdays beginning July 1st. Get a feel for it, see how it works out, and then move from there. But the ultimate objective being to be completely co-ed during all hours of operation.
Now, you had mentioned earlier the number of organizations that you interact with in terms of the facility. What about other agencies within town, maybe social agencies? Is there an interaction in terms of delivering service to the youth who might require just a tad more than sports, in terms of referrals and the overall health and well-being of the youth?
We actually seek that out, and that's an important mission of the Boys and Girls Club, is not to just serve those that arrive at the doorstep, but to actually seek out those that really need the help and might not be getting it from other sources. And toward that end, we have an individual services director, Rick Metters, who's a fairly new member of the professional staff. He's done an excellent job. One of his prime functions is to do an outreach, do more of an outreach, and work with the school system, for example. Work with the guidance department. Find out who should be at the Boys and Girls Club but isn't. Go to that child and see if we can get that child involved in the club and help in that manner. We do the same thing with the Woburn Council of Social Concern. Referrals back and forth, advice back and forth. We seek professional counsel from the guidance counselors within the school system.
Well, it's kind of a social commentary. Do you find that it's even more important in these times? There's a lot of single parents, children with more time on their hands, perhaps in some cases less direction. In your experience there, is it more important, or has it stayed steady, or is there more demands placed on the organization?
I think it's always been there. I mean, the need has always been there. The problems have always been there. And to me, every time I hear of a problem of that nature, it reaches me. And you want to try and help everyone that you can. Unfortunately, you just can't do that. But it really does stick out in your mind, and you feel good when you're able to, when you know that you've reached just one person, one child, that may not have been achieved what he or she could, except for the influence of the Boys and Girls Club.
Now, what about the delicate relations between youth and law enforcement, for instance? Now, it was the police chief who was one of the founding fathers. Has the strength of that relationship been maintained through the Woburn Police with the Boys Club over these years, that same type of connection?
It's actually been enhanced. Interestingly now, many of the members of the police department are alumni of the organization. We also work in very close conjunction with the court system. Judge Cullen at Woburn District Court
is also on your board, I understand.
That's correct, and he's also been a very involved, very concerned member of the board. And he's there to help us, and we think we're there to help him in terms of meeting his needs as well.
Now, what about the future? Let's talk about programs. And there's a very healthy list from bubblegum contests to ping pong, arts, crafts. I mean, there's a whole full page and more of available programs. Some of your favorites, what does the future look like in terms of new programs? Give us kind of a lowdown on what's going on there.
Well, with some of the creative programs that are there, I have no idea what the future is going to bring. I know that the past has always included a very solid basketball program. The past has always included a very solid swimming program, and the present as well. And I'm sure that those will continue into the future. Who knows? And we go anything from the bubble gum blowing contest that you mentioned to putting on the hits, which is
frequently done on
a lip sync
6,
offshoot, and I guess it depends on what happens on TV as to what happens at the Boys Club. But
whoever thought that lip syncing would have reached the heights of Milli Vanilli, for instance? Now, what about the future of the organization, and characterize it at this point? Sound, obviously a sound foundation. Hard economic times, it doesn't seem to be to the point of a great deal of concern. A strong future?
I think the economics make it more difficult with every passing day. We're solid. We expect to be solid for some time into the future. We're building for the future, and we look forward to the future. We hope we'll be able to serve the needs of the youth of the area for the next 30 years as well.
In terms of capital planning, how about any additional capital projects? I would think at this point you're somewhat constrained. You've grown and pretty much built out the existing space. Is there room for additional capital expansion? There
would be room for additional expansion if we so chose. At this point, we're trying to maintain existing systems, which is a very expensive task as well. And we have boiler systems, for example, that are getting close to 30 years old and in need of replacement. So there's always something that we can do by way of capital improvement to the facility.
Okay, unfortunately we've run out of time. I'd like to thank our guest, Jamie McKeown, president of the Woburn Boys and Girls Club, and that's Boys Club Lane.
Boys Club Lane, soon to be Boys and Girls Club Lane.
Woburn, Massachusetts. Jamie, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and have a pleasant evening.